Has Ferrari just built the fastest car in the new regulations? Or the most dangerous for itself? Because what is happening in the second week of testing in Bahrain is not a simple continuation of tests. Ferrari does not come to this first day to roll and accumulate kilometers. It arrives with an aggressive evolution already assembled, with a new power unit, important aerodynamic changes and a technical philosophy that can make the SF26 the absolute reference, or an extremely difficult car to tame. After a first week where they showed pace and consistency, now comes the real test. Seeing if that high-performance ceiling can be sustained when you start to really push the technical package. Ferrari does not enter the first day of the second week in Bahrain as a team simply continuing a testing program. It arrives as one of the reference cars of the new 2026 regulations, but also as the most technically aggressive project on the grid in this initial phase. The first week left a clear impression within the paddock. The SF26 was not only fast, it was also capable of completing solid mileage. That combination, which historically rarely went together in Maranello, is what immediately raises the level of expectation in this second round. Because when a car shows very high raw pace and can also run consistently, the next step is no longer confirming potential. It is validating whether that potential can be sustained when you start pushing the limits of the concept. And therein lies the key point. The SF26 is not a conventional car. Everything that is leaked internally points to a machine with a very high performance ceiling, but with an extremely narrow operating window. This means that the car can be devastating if it is within its ideal parameters, but also delicate if conditions change slightly. Fine balance between power, downforce and thermal management. Three variables that in 2026 are more interconnected than ever. Ferrari arrives on the first day of this second week not with the same car that closed the first round. And this is essential to understand. It is not continuity, it is immediate evolution. The team has decided to introduce its first major wave of development, something unusual in historical terms so early in the preseason. The package includes a fresh, new power unit, relevant aerodynamic tweaks and thermal management refinements. They are not cosmetic changes. They are structural interventions on the core of the SF26's performance. And this turns the first day of the second week into a critical day of technical validation. On the aerodynamic level, Ferrari has worked on the ground, spoilers and vortex control elements, seeking to improve the extraction of the flow in the diffuser and stabilize the rear axle without increasing excessive sensitivity to side wind or asphalt irregularities. The intention is clear. Keep the car glued to the ground, maximize efficiency and release some drag on a straight line to exploit the engine's performance. That combination explains why the SF26 was already showing very competitive figures in speed traps. This is how Ferrari arrives at the beginning of the second week, as one of the reference cars of the new regulations, yes, but also as the most technically ambitious project at the moment. With a car that promises a lot, that has already shown strong pace and consistency, but now must demonstrate that it can sustain its aggressiveness without losing operational stability. The SF26 is not designed to be conservative. It is designed to maximize. And the first day of this second week in Bahrain is the moment in which Ferrari begins to discover if that maximization is really mastered, or if it still needs adjustments before the 2026 championship officially begins. That if Act 1 explains how Ferrari technically gets to this second week, Act 2 forces us to understand what is really at stake on this first day in Bahrain. Because Ferrari is not simply testing new parts. You're trying to confirm that your extreme concept is sustainable when you start pushing the car towards the real limit of performance. The SF26 showed in the first week a very difficult combination to achieve: high raw pace and strong volume of mileage. This generated a clear perception within the paddock. Ferrari had interpreted the new regulations very well. But the second week changes the focus. It's no longer about proving that the car is fast. It is about checking whether that speed is stable when a new power unit and a more demanding aerodynamic package are introduced. And here appears the real challenge of the first day: the narrow operating window. When a car has a very high performance ceiling but a small window, every balance adjustment, every thermal variation and every change on the track can alter the overall behavior. This turns each run into an exercise in precision. It's not just going out to shoot, it's to map the behavior of the car under real conditions of fuel load, ambient temperature and tire degradation. The first day of the second week in Bahrain thus becomes a day of critical correlation. Ferrari needs to verify that what they see in the wind tunnel and in simulation matches what the SF26 delivers when the asphalt is over 40 degrees and the car begins to accumulate thermal stress in the rear. And this is where the interaction between three factors that define this moment comes in. First, the refined aerodynamics. The new evolutionary step seeks to improve flow extraction and stability of the rear axle without penalizing drag. But if that stability depends too much on a specific height or a specific rake window, the car can become unpredictable when conditions change even slightly. Second, the architecture of the power unit. The commitment to a smaller turbine and intense electrical deployment forces constant thermal control to be maintained. If the cooling is not perfectly efficient on this first day, the equipment not only loses performance, it loses operating margin. And in 2026, with the new energy distribution, that can make enormous differences on the straight and when exiting curves. Third, energy integration. The fine-tuning of the ERS, gear ratios and use of the small turbo is not something that is validated in a fast lap, but in full runs when energy must be managed consistently. And Bahrain, with its strong acceleration zones, is an ideal setting to expose weaknesses in that management. That's why the first day of this second week is not spectacular from the outside. We won't necessarily see Ferrari going for the absolute best time. What they are looking for is consistency in the data. They seek to know if the car can maintain that high ceiling without falling outside its operating window when fuel drops, when temperatures change, or when degradation appears. The SF26 is a car designed to maximize efficiency and power. But maximizing always involves risk. And what Ferrari is doing on this first day is measuring exactly how much real margin they have before that aggressive concept starts to become unstable. Ferrari already saw in the first week that the car can be a reference in pure pace and that it can also complete solid mileage. But now the question is much deeper. Can it sustain that conceptual aggressiveness without compromising stability, reliability, and scope for development? Because here comes a key factor that we had not yet addressed with sufficient weight: future development. When you opt for an extreme philosophy such as the combination of highly tuned aerodynamics, demanding thermal management, and aggressive electrical deployment, you are partially closing certain doors. You are maximizing a specific path. And that implies that any future deviation may be more complex to correct. On this first day, Ferrari not only measures current performance, measures elasticity of the concept, measures how much room it has to evolve without breaking the delicate balance that defines the SF26. If the car responds well to adjustments, if the temperature data remains within expectations, if the aerodynamic stability is consistent when conditions change minimally, then Ferrari will not only have a fast car. You will have a solid foundation to build on throughout the year. But if they detect that this operating window is too narrow, that small variations generate important oscillations in balance or energy performance, then the work to come will be much more surgical. And therein lies the real tension of this moment. The first day of the second week in Bahrain is the moment where Ferrari begins to discover if its very high ceiling is really achievable in real championship conditions, or if it needs fine adjustments to extend that operating window before Melbourne puts everything under competitive pressure. We are not simply seeing a test. We are seeing Ferrari validate whether its most aggressive bet in years can become the basis of a dominant project under the 2026 regulation. And the most interesting thing is that they do not need to set the best time of the day to be victorious. What they need is something much more important. Ferrari has not come to the second week of testing in Bahrain to find out if the SF26 is competitive. He already hinted at that in the first week. He has come to confirm something much more important: whether he can control the most aggressive car he has built in years under a completely new regulation. The SF26 combines very high raw pace, solid mileage, and an extremely ambitious technical philosophy. But it also combines something equally relevant: a narrow operating window, a delicate balance between power, thermal management, and downforce. And that combination is what makes this first day of the second week a quiet turning point. We are not seeing fireworks. We are seeing structural validation. We're seeing if the new power unit, refined aero package, and aggressive energy approach can coexist under real track stress. If the data add up, if the temperature is under control, if the balance remains stable within that very fine window, Ferrari will not only have confirmed that it is fast, you will have confirmed that your concept is sustainable. And in a new regulation, that's worth more than any preseason best lap. Because the real danger of betting so hard from the beginning is not making a mistake in speed. It is making a mistake in stability. So the final question is not whether Ferrari was the fastest on this first day. The question is another. Are we seeing the birth of the Ferrari that will mark the 2026 era? Or the beginning of a concept so extreme that it will need fine surgery before becoming champion? The answer starts here.